Hello, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to episode number 44 of the Wulong Talks podcast. My name is Jason, and I'm the host of the show. And this week, I'm joined by the full crew, so we're back together. The A team is back, and we've got a plan. It may not come together quite well as Hannibal Smith's plans, but it's a plan nonetheless. Anyway, let me introduce to my left. We've got the Rustin Kid, Rich Kid in the house. Rich Kid, say what's up?
What's up? What's up?
Cool. And on the line, we've got the Mad Geek up north as well, Big A. Big A, what's up, man?
All right.
Don't sound too happy to be here, Big A. That's cool. No, I'm playing. Well, yeah, boys, it's been a little while since we've been back together, man. So, how's everybody keeping? What's everybody been up to? What you been doing? Have you been playing any games? Watched any movies? Anything like that? Whoever wants to go first, I guess.
Alvin.
Yeah, movies off a bit of TV and all that. It's the usual kind of thing.
Cool. What did you check out at the cinema?
Yeah, I went to see Tomb Raider, Pacific Rim, and Ready Player One.
Okay. Any good? What are they saying?
Tomb Raider, you can wait for the Blu-ray, to be honest. I don't think it's the worst adaptation of a video game, but in some places it was bad. Like some of the CGI was pretty fucking poor. There's a scene involving a parachute where you're almost like, why did he even bother? Because it just looks pure fake. But if you play the 2013 reboot, I think you'll probably quite enjoy it.
So the fakeness that you're talking about, does it look more fake than Indiana Jones when Shia LaBeouf is swinging through the trees with the monkeys?
It's to the point where you think, wait, was that scene filmed in someone's house? Like the close-up shots. That's how bad it is. Yeah, because you can tell it's super blue screen, and the trees and all that are just like CGI, and like it's just proper bad. Like that's the main bad part about it. But there are some other things about it. I mean, it's not the kind of humanized like bit. She's an actual character, unlike in the Angelina Jolie movies. But I thought it was better than the Jolie movies, to be honest.
Yeah.
It's still not up to the standard that I would like, but it's a throwaway experience, pretty much, more or less. That's what I'm saying. You may as well just wait for the Blu-ray.
Okay. There's meant to be a scene that everyone's talking about where she does this rope climb up like some side of a mountain or something like that. Do you know what scene I'm talking about? Because the way how people have described this scene in the film, like I want to see the film just because of that. You know, I'm a sucker for like action and stuff. But do you know what scene I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. The only climbing I remember, there's a bit later on in the movie where there's a rope, but she don't climb no rope. She just does that shit barehanded.
Oh yeah. I think that's
like
the scene.
A scene.
Yeah, but it's meant to be really, really good because like apparently she did it in like for real. There's no wires or anything like that.
Oh, it's seconds and then it's gone. It's not a scene, so to speak.
Ah, okay. I'll wait for the Blu-ray. Thanks, Alvin.
And what about the other movie everybody's talking about, Ready Player One? What did you make of that one?
You know what? All the changes that they made from the books made sense for the film, so I wasn't offended by any of the changes. I knew there was going to be major changes, even from the very beginning. Which is like there's a race scene which is like fucking wicked, and it's nothing like the first kind of task that's in the book that they have to complete. In the book it's way super cryptic. You get none of Wade in school, to be honest. It kind of skips over that and kind of like goes into explaining the Oasis and James Halliday dying and him leaving behind like the Easter egg and saying, yo, you've got to find it and all this kind of business. And then yeah, the race is the first thing. And from then on, I was just like, okay, I may as well kind of forget the book. I know there'll be kind of like bits of it in the film. And there is actually a major bit of the book which happens like way later on in the book, but they change the character it happens for, but it totally works for the film. Like all changes work for the film. And there's a fantastic bit in the middle involving a very famous film, which I was super surprised that this was even in there. But like, that bit was insane because I need to go back and see as to how much was CGI, how much they actually ripped from the film and then superimposed things onto it. But yeah, I enjoyed it overall. Like I was still ill at the time, but But yeah, all the changes made sense. It was good. I enjoyed it. Like some people seem to really hate the fact that it references things, and I'm just like, well, why though? Like, why is that the reason to hate something? Like, just watch the enjoyable fucking CGI fest in front of you. And also another complaint is that it's too Spielberg. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? That's why you want to go and see a Spielberg film, for the Spielbergness.
Mm.
Okay, cool. And lastly, Pacific Rim. Or Pacific Rim 2, that should be.
It's a movie. I'm not gonna fucking try and sit here and fucking make out like Pacific Rim was ever the smartest thing ever. For some reason, since Guillermo del Toro's won like an Oscar, everyone's going on about the first Pacific Rim like it was fucking rocket science, when it literally wasn't. You know what I mean? It was just a simple dumb movie. This one is a little bit dumber and a little more simple, but I want to get to fucking robots fighting, punching shit. And it did that, so I was entertained. And as well, they do set up a third one at the end. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's like, I saw it in IMAX. I think it's worth seeing on IMAX. But if you like fucking robots and monsters and like seeing them fucking fight, then yeah, go and see the movie.
Okay. Oh, cool.
Cool, man. Cool. Well, it looks like you've been busy, boy. So yeah, it's good that you have been, because I've been busy, but not with movies, unfortunately. Not had a lot of time for movies recently. So for those of you who are used to listening to our movie review podcast, those will be back soon. We just haven't really had much time to kind of get everything together for that. But not to worry, I said the movie reviews will be back soon. Rich Kid, we've been up to, man, and what you been watching?
I tried to get back into the second half of this Walking Dead malarkey, and I just couldn't do it.
The second half of season 8.
The second half, whatever the fuck you want to call it. I couldn't get into it, right? Like I generally tried. Like I wanted to, because at this point you're dedicated. You've got a relationship with these people, and you want to treat them good. But I just don't care anymore. Like I think I watched the first episode of this second half, or whatever you want to call it, where what's his name? Spoiler alert. Carl Grimes dies from the zombie bite, and then I think I saw the next episode after that, and it just felt boring. It, like, the budget's gone down, the act, yeah, it is not how it started out, and so I watched that, and then I watched another show which is produced by Idris Elba, and it's on Sky One, and for the life of I'm actually really sorry, but I've actually forgotten what the name of the show is called. Jason's just gonna look it up now. Yeah, but it's set in the 80s, and it's about an African family, and the African dad, his brother, comes from Ghana to come and live with them, and it's about them just living in the UK during the 80s, and it's stupidly funny. It's so funny, and it's called The Long Run. That's what it's called. It's called The Long Run, and it just reminded me of just like growing up in that era, and just having aunties and uncles just come into your house, just no matter what, you just get that letter through the letterbox, and they say that your uncles come to stay with you for a little while, and it ends up being something like 4 years or something ridiculous, and yeah, and it was just a really enjoyable watch, and it's the type of thing where you don't actually have to be African or black to enjoy it. It's just a family is based from there, but it's got a wide array of characters, and it's got like really good nods to things from the 80s. So the clothing is dead on point. There's loads of references to shows from that period as well. So yeah, I'm really enjoying it. I actually need to finish that season. So I'm good and interest for doing that. I also watched Suicide Squad, Hell to Pay, which is the most recent movie from the DC animated universe. And it wasn't bad. It was okay. It's weird because I look at like the DC animated universe, and they started off really well, especially in where they were keeping storylines tied to each other. So each movie would be a knock-on effect from the last one. But the past few, they just seem to have like dropped the ball somewhat. And I'm not sure if they're just trying to test waters by trying to get some characters and trying to push them to the forefront to see if there's something that they can do with them later on down the line, whether it be merchandise or or toys or anything like that. But it was an okay watch. It was not better than the first one, and it had some interesting plot lines, which does link back to one of the DC animated movies, but it's something that they really only touch upon in the last 10 minutes of it. And you're just like, well, you know, if you'd made that like the main plot run throughout the whole thing, it would have been a lot more interesting. So I'm not going to give any spoilers as to what it is, but it's definitely worth a watch just for that. And then what else have I been doing? I think that's about it, to be honest. And just obviously the whole comic book run. I'm back onto Nightwing. Just picked up a recent issue of Nightwing, which is picked up the pace thanks to the recommendation by the Big A. And that's it, really. Yeah.
Cool. All good. Yeah, that's a lot there, man. Well, listeners, you got a lot of recommendations there and things that you can catch up on already. So if you do catch up with any of those shows or any of those movies, let us know what you think of them. If you listen to the end of the podcast, there'll actually be a short trailer at the end where you'll be able to find out our contact information and how you can get a hold of us. So make sure you do get in touch with us if you do, because we want to hear from you. For me, I didn't really get to watch a lot of stuff in the cinema, unfortunately. I've been traveling a lot, but I did watch 2 movies on Netflix. Now, with Netflix at the moment, there seems to be this conversation being had with a lot of fans and people around who are saying that, you know, Netflix's movies are not quite the same as their TV shows, in the sense that the movies that they've committed to producing and putting out there, the quality isn't quite the same as some of their long form TV shows. And I mean, it's hard to disagree with that when you consider that they put out like Death Note. Like, you know, like you can't really disagree when they're doing things like that. But they had 2 big movies come out recently, so while I was traveling, I was able to watch both of them. So the first one I watched was a movie called The Outsider, starring Jared Leto and Tadanobu Asano and a few other familiar faces as well. Bottom line is it's poor. I thought it was a really, really poor movie. It meanders a lot. It doesn't really go anywhere in terms of the plot. Jared Leto does his best corpse impression throughout the whole film, and basically, I don't know if they were going for some kind of like Man with No Name, Clint Eastwood style character, but he's not the guy for that. So yeah, it really wasn't a good idea to have him, just lots of scenes of him not saying much. To be honest, the only people who are going to really like that film are Jared Leto fans, as far as I'm concerned. So anybody else is really not going to be that interested in the movie. But hey ho, if you want to check it out, check it out. And the only other thing that I got to kind of sit down and watch intently and properly was Annihilation, the latest film from the British filmmaker Alex Garland, who was the writer and director behind Ex Machina. And this is his new movie starring Natalie Portman and Tessa Thompson, Gina Rodriguez, Jennifer Jason Leigh, and you know, there's a couple of other recognizable faces. Oscar Isaac, of course, is in it as well. And you know, that movie I thought was quite interesting. It's not perfect. It is a bit slow in some areas, even for me, and I don't mind slow normally. I'm quite happy with slow if it means we're going to expand on characters and things like that. But it is a bit slow in some places. But what I liked about the movie and what I like about Alex Garland's work in general is that he's not afraid of embracing the kind of old school sci-fi concepts. You know, the other day, me and Richard were having a private conversation, and we were talking about kind of, you know, what sci-fi used to stand for was kind of the big ideas, you know, these big concepts. It was a way of people exploring ideas about humanity and what humanity is capable of, and where we can go from where we are now, and you know, all of these kind of issues that we used to address. And then somewhere along the way, you know, big budget sci-fi kind of has fallen into just either being, you know, relying on big spectacle or relying on, you know, shocks to draw in the audience. And so a little bit of that has been lost. You know, Arrival in some ways does try and kind of harken back to that type of sci-fi. But yeah, a lot of that old school sci-fi is gone. But it's great that we're now starting to see a comeback of that type of sci-fi for me, especially with Blade Runner 2049, which I haven't seen yet, but Richard has seen. And Rich, I know you were saying, you know, it was amazing and
loved it.
It kind of from what I know of the movie, it seems like a movie that also is dealing with, you know, the big ideas and the ideas about identity and humanity and all of those kind of things that sci-fi is usually very strong at dealing with. So Annihilation itself, yeah, it feeds very well into that kind of idea. The performances throughout are all pretty strong, I felt. CGI was pretty good as well, considering the budget, and some of the special effects are really fantastic. There's one scene in particular that's really, really creepy and well played out. So that's worth checking out. And all in all, yeah, I would say, you know, Annihilation is worth a watch. I said it is a little bit slow, so you are going to have to be kind of patient with it. But it is very interesting in terms of what it is that the movie is trying to do and the message it's trying to get across. So yeah, that was us really. That's the stuff we've been watching. So let's crack on, shall we? Now, we've got a couple of things to cover today. We are going to have a quick look. Oh, yes, we need to quickly, before we move on, actually, just mention that on the 4th of April, so a couple of days ago, it was the 21st anniversary of the passing of a pretty phenomenal comic book artist and somebody who was a true pioneer in the industry, a man called William Graham, who was known as Billy Graham in circles. He worked for Marvel Comics predominantly during the 1960s to sort of 1980s. And if anybody is familiar with kind of Marvel comic books from that era, then they're definitely going to know his work. He worked on that classic Jungle Action comic book with Don McGregor that gave Black Panther that legendary run that really a lot of people who are writing Black Panther now kind of are influenced by. He was also somebody who was the first artist to draw Luke Cage and to help create that character visually. So the classic sort of Luke Cage look of the yellow shirt, the jeans, the chain, that all came from Billy Graham. That was all his look. So he worked on that. He obviously worked on Power Man and Iron Fist, the original series as well. So he drew both of those characters. And he worked on a lot of horror comic books as well. He worked on Vampire Tales. There was another one that Marvel was doing at the time that I can't remember the name of now. The name escapes me, but he was involved in that. And I believe he did actually draw Blade originally as well when he was introduced in the Tomb of Dracula book. So a lot of the comic book characters that you'd be familiar with, he was actually involved in. So I think it's worth all of us who are fans of that era to go and have a look at his work and you know, really kind of just remember the people who came before us and who helped us to kind of foster our passions and our dreams. And you know, people like him had to go through a great deal of adversity in order to get to where they are. So it's always good to remember people like that. So if you want to look him up, there is an account on Instagram, I believe, that you can find. So if you type in Billy Graham artist, he should come up on Instagram there. Sorry, it's the artist Billy Graham. That's what it is. So yeah, if you type in artist Billy Graham on Instagram, the account will come up, and then that will take you to his official Facebook page as well, and that will tell you a bit more about the artist and what kind of things his estate are doing to remember his work and his memory. All right. Yeah, let's move on, as I said, because we've got a couple of other topics to get through as well. Yeah, we had the official announcement for the SpiderMan game. It's now being released on the 7th of September of this year. I think everybody is looking forward to it. Boys, you're looking forward to it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And Alvin, you can't get it because you ain't got a PS4. So
oh, shoot. You know, you should buy one. You should buy one just because. Buy one for that.
Well, this is the thing. I am contemplating getting a PS4 now because
you're balling, bro. I was only joking. You're living that big boy life, man.
Sorry, go on now.
Yeah, God of War looks wicked. So, like, I actually was contemplating getting one anyway. But I don't know. It depends on it. It depends how good it is, because it could all just be smoke and mirrors for you. Who knows?
Could be, but I mean, from what I've seen of the gameplay trailers, I actually kind of like what they're doing with this game. I think it's got a lot of potential.
Yeah,
and I guess the key will be, you know, how open world it is. So does it feel like it's a proper open world game? And also, you know, the kind of replayability of it, as in, will there be enough content within the game? Because potentially there should be. If you think of Spider-Man as a comic book character and how many other characters are connected to him, then there should be lots of opportunity for different types of gameplay and things like that. But yeah, I said a lot will depend on, you know, how the game mechanics work and things like that. But it looks like they've invested quite heavily in that from what we've seen. So yeah, it's on my wish list. I'm definitely gonna get rich.
I mean, I think another thing that you said when you mentioned mechanics, I think the longevity of the game, that's not even going to be too much of an issue. I think, because you can have a short game and a game can be freaking awesome. So like I think I look at like Batman Arkham Asylum, and that was a wicked game, but it was super short, but it was so dense that it left you wanting more, so that when the sequel came out, like, you were just like, okay, cool, fuck it, I'm gonna snap it up, and you weren't even cussing when you finished the first one. I think all of those things that you said, I'm not disputing them at all in the slightest. But I'll tell you what it does boil down, for me personally, is the mechanics of how you play as Spider-Man. I think that's how it is. It's like you're gonna have to want to be Spider-Man in that game, which is, you know, like Alvin, you were saying, it might be all smoke and mirrors, but from what I can gather, it seems like they've nailed it down to a T. I'm not sure if you played the Arkham Asylum game or any of the Arkham games of Batman, but the main thing, I mean, apart from, you know, swinging around, you know, let's say Gotham City and interacting with Alfred and, you know, and James Gordon, whatever, it's the stuff you can do as Batman that literally, for me, ties the whole game together. So, for example, just, you know, sitting on top of a gargoyle, going to infrared, see the amount of people that are there, drop down into the middle, and you start doing combos. Like, listen, man, like, that is the best feeling ever. Like, that's the closest that any of us will get to Batman, especially if you're black, because, you know, black people don't have money. So, so yeah. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to the Spider-Man game, and I think I'm going to get the special edition, which comes with a statue, because, you know, you guys know I collect statues and stuff. I'm a sucker for that. But yeah, I can't wait.
Yeah, no doubt, man, no doubt. So yeah, listeners, let us know if you're interested in the Spider-Man game as well, and if it's on your wish list or if it isn't. Yeah, let us know, man. We'd be interested to hear what you think on that one. All right, one last piece of news before we move on, and this is a slightly sad piece of news that only kind of I discovered today. Well, I think today it was announced officially anyway, that the co-founder of Studio Ghibli, his name is Isao Takahata, he has passed away, unfortunately. Although he was, to be fair, he's had a good innings. He was 81, I think it was, or something like that. But he was somebody who, you know, along with Miyazaki, had kind of started the dream that is, you know, Studio Ghibli, which is one of the world's most successful movie studios now.
Respected. You know?
Yeah, very much so, as you said, respected around the world. So you know, they've really kind of built the Studio Ghibli brand into something that you know, is ingrained in pop culture now. Takahata himself was a director of a movie as well called My Neighbors, the Yamadas, which is one of the kind of classic Ghibli movies as well, and was really fun to watch. A really funny movie as well, actually. It's surprising how kind of funny and humorous it was. So yeah, it's very sad news that we've had that come along there. But, you know, as said, people will continue to keep the memory alive as long as Studio Ghibli stays around, which I think it will. And as long as, you know, people continue to watch those Studio Ghibli movies, then, you know, the dream and the magic of what they've created will continue. So, yeah, we're good to go. All right, let's move on, shall we? So, Rich, you had a challenge for us, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
Well, not even a challenge so much, but I guess it was more kind of a talking point. As you know, listeners, we're geeks, so we kind of have these kind of conversations amongst ourselves all the time. So we decided, why not have one like on the microphone where everybody can hear it. So Richie had a kind of topic, I guess, for us to discuss. So shoot, man.
Yeah, well, basically, it came off the whole conversation that we had about sci-fi and what sci-fi used to stand for and what it is now. And I remember just sitting down and just thinking, like, there's certain things that I actually miss, whether it be in comic books, whether it be in animation, whether it be in film or television, or whether it be in books. But like, it seems like, I wouldn't say that things have become stale, but if you want to look for original things, or original content, it's getting harder and harder to basically find it, because people are almost scared to try something different. Case in example would be all of these big companies, film companies now wanting to all of a sudden create universes, wanting to make franchises. And what happened to the days of just for example, just seeing one film and loving and enjoying that one film. So like, I was just thinking about that and just going, there's certain scenes or certain things I've read or heard, and I wish I still had moments like that, because you just can't get those things back. So basically what I said is that, you don't have to do all three, but something from film or television, something from a comic book, and maybe something from like a book. One scene that always sticks out in your head that reminds you about the reason why you love being a geek, and no one can take that privilege away from you. So I mean, I can go first. I mean, like, what I chose was the first one was from a comic book, and it was it Uncanny X-Men? Yeah, it was just X-Men issue 25, and it was the final part of a storyline called Fatal Attraction. I'm not even going to bore you with the details of the Fatal Attraction storyline, because it's neither here nor there, and quite a lot of people, it's quite divided amongst who likes it and who doesn't like it. But it ends with Magneto literally losing a plot, and Wolverine going, okay, listen, we've done it. I think he actually says this in it. I think he does a line of, we've actually done this dance too many times. And he actually goes to kill Magneto, and Magneto goes, you know what? Every time we've done this dance, we were playing by the rules. You guys have actually pushed the boundaries so far. I'm gonna end this dance. And he ends up ripping the adamantium off of Wolverine's bones. And I just remember seeing that it was like a 2-page spread. It was drawn by Andy Kubert, who's one of the Kubert brothers, who were like, amazing artists. And I remember just literally just sitting there, just looking at this 2-page spread, and it was just so graphic, and just going like, fuck me, like, where does it go from here? And then, like, just being like, just amazed, like that's the first time you'd ever seen anybody do anything of such callousness, because he intended to kill Wolverine. So even if he didn't kill Wolverine, he took away one of the things that makes Wolverine who he is. And so basically, obviously, you had the next issue come out, and it's Wolverine healing up, and his healing factor is kind of being shot out. It's been put into overdrive. And so he's talking to Professor X, and he's like, listen, put me back in the field. And Professor X basically goes, okay, let's give you a bit of a training run in the danger room. And Wolverine's handling the training room pretty well and everything. And he asked Professor X to turn it up to 10. And it's Wolverine fighting against a Sentinel. And the wording by Scott Lobdell, who is another, I think, undersold writer who did some amazing work in the 90s for X-Men, is he doesn't even put dialogue to the characters. He just puts, like the little boxes, just describing what's going on. And he goes on to describe this bit where you actually see Wolverine. There's another double page spread. Wolverine ends up running away from this Sentinel, and it describes how everybody who's watching this fight or watching this training scene is astonished and amazed, because they all see something that they've never ever seen before anywhere, and they've never heard anybody mention this. And they see the look of fear on Wolverine's face, and Wolverine gets cornered by this Sentinel. And just out of instinct, he pops his claws, and then adamantium, and their bone claws. And I kid you not, I lost the fucking plot. I was like, oh my God, so he has claws, and they're like bone claws. And literally, I mean, this just opened up so many stories. And to be honest, probably some of the best Wolverine stories from the 90s into the early 2000s as well, about him trying to reclaim the thing that makes him the best at what he does, and what he does isn't pretty. But I just always remember that scene, and I miss things like that. I just miss scenes like that just make me want to run to the comic book store when I'm about 5 minutes away, because I'm scared that someone might buy the last issue of something that I enjoy reading. So there's that. So I don't know if you guys want to do a comic book scene, or or book scene or whatever.
I was trying to think of a comic book scene. I can't really no, you know what it would have to be? It would have to be in terms of things that I suppose kind of solidify why you're a geek is probably Infinity, the original Infinity Gauntlet series, when the heroes first arrive on oh god, I've forgotten the name of the planet that they're on now, but when they first arrive to confront Thanos, and he's got the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah.
And I remember just reading it, and there was a chill kind of going up and down my spine as Thanos was just kind of taking out everybody. I remember clearly when he suffocates Cyclops.
Yeah.
When he puts the box on his head, and Cyclops and Captain America kind of is holding him, and he's going, "You've murdered him. You're a psycho. You've murdered him." And Thanos is just kind of I don't care. You're all trying to stop me from achieving my goal. And he destroys the Hulk. And I remember oh my god, how has he beaten the Hulk? At that point in comic books, the Hulk was unbeatable. And even though he had opponents who he faced, and he would face him in a confrontation, get beaten down, but he'd come back, and he'd always kind of deal with the situation. In Infinity Gauntlet, when he goes to confront Thanos handles him like he's a little boy, and just kind of it's just ridiculous, the ease with which he does it. And it's the way that story is written as well by Jim Starlin.
Yeah,
he understood how to kind of create tension and jeopardy for heroes that you cared about, because by this point, obviously, Marvel heroes had been around for quite a while, and we were all invested in what their outcomes were going to be, and how safe they were going to be, and so on. So you cared about the characters. And in this scene, it just was brutal the way he did it. And it wasn't necessarily graphic, it was just brutal because of the way that these people that you cared about were being just brushed aside left, right.
The callousness of it, and the casualness of it.
Yeah,
that's what it was. It was Thanos was just casual when he was pulling off those things, man.
It was just it was brutal. I think that is one kind of, because I think that whole battle with him doesn't even last that long. I think it might be about 4 or 5 pages. I mean, there's the memorable scene with Cap as well, who kind of walks up and confronts him, and is doing the Captain America thing. It's like, listen, I'm not going to back down. So you're going to have to, you want to win here, you're going to have to kill me, because that's the only way this thing ends. And I remember him putting up his shield, and Thanos just shattering his shield with almost one blow, and you were just like, oh my god, what is going on here? Cap's shield has been destroyed. Do you understand how dangerous this thing is? And then I remember one also thing that I remember, the finger snap.
Yeah, snap of the finger kick. That got me. That got me.
Just
different.
wipes out half the universe with a snap of his fingers once he's got all the gems. Oh, it's crazy. People, if you're Avengers movie fans, if you're MCU fans, and you're looking forward to Avengers Infinity War, and you want to get a taste of what it's going to be like, number one, prepare yourself for some losses, because there's going to be some pain in that movie. Number two, go and read that comic book run from Jim Starlin, the Infinity Gauntlet, I think it's called, the original one. Because that's some some brilliant writing. It really is. It's some amazing stuff. So go and check that out, man, for sure. Alvin, what about you, bro? Any comic book suggestions?
Yeah, chapter 4 of Watchmen, which is called Watchmaker.
Yeah.
In the chapter, it's when Dr. Manhattan, after getting outed by the press for supposedly causing people to have cancer, he exiles himself to Mars, and what you get is kind of his history, but also at the same time they don't actually tell you it. You just kind of have to figure it out for yourself. But it turns out that from the moment he's Dr. Manhattan, he doesn't experience time like a normal person. It's not linear. He's experiencing his choices and consequences and everything else up until the point where like the tachyons are stopping him like experience the future. He's experiencing all of that in one. It's almost like he's multitasking with time. Every decision, everything he's saying, he knows as to whether he's telling the truth or a lie or not, because he's telling the lie and the truth at the same time.
Yeah.
Like when he said to his wife that he wasn't really interested in Laurie or anything like that, and he wasn't playing away from home. He knew that years later he would leave his wife because he was experiencing that at the same time. And that concept, it took me a while because I remember like reading it and then having to go back to the beginning again because it's like, why is it jumping about so much? And then like when the penny just finally dropped as I was like reading it, I was just like, that's one of the sickest things and one of the craziest concepts. And I've never read anything like that before or since. And I just think it's one of the best kind of like ideas that I'd like seen reading. Had it spat out to you, but they don't actually spell out to you. You just have to figure out. Like I think some people may read that chapter of Watchmen and not realize what's going on and think it's just history being recited, but it's actually way more than that.
I mean, Alan Moore was one of them writers who's just way ahead of his time, man. I mean, like I was very close to picking V for Vendetta and the scene where he and Evie first meet, and the way that he explains his philosophy to Evie in the book is just amazing. Like, and as said, he was one, you know, Moore is really a writer who was kind of ahead of his time in terms of what he understood, you know, that the comic book didn't have as many limitations as some writers thought it did. There was actually so much more you could do within the medium in terms of how you told your stories. And yeah, you just picked like a perfect example, Alvin, as you said, with the way that he plays around with time in the Watchmen.
And drugs.
It makes so much sense. Yeah, and drugs. Yeah, because obviously you need to be high as hell.
High as hell. I actually think that Alan Moore probably is Dr. Manhattan. Fuck that. Because he's written some amazingness before, man.
He's written some absolute madness. So I don't know. But yeah, no, those are good choices, guys, man, for sure. So listeners, if you're comic book fans and you've got, you know, a specific comic book that you read or a comic book scene that you read that really resonated with you for some reason or another, then as said, let us know, man. We love hearing from you. And we'll absolutely read out your suggestions. And what we'll do next week is next week we'll have another conversation around the same thread, but we'll probably pick a movie or a book or a video game or something like that. So for the next couple of weeks, we'll do that. And we'll try and involve you as much as we can as well. So we'll put some stuff out on social media and try and get you involved. So, because as I said, we want to hear from you too. So we'll definitely do that over the couple of weeks. Okay, well, we're pretty much at the point where we need to do our big one, which is something that, you know, we've been waiting ever since we started this podcast. Pretty much, we've been waiting to have this particular discussion. We've had to wait patiently. Richard's had to wait patiently, and it's not been easy for him, but we've finally arrived. This week, as you know, was the 20th anniversary of the seminal anime series Cowboy Bebop.
Fuck yeah.
I said Richard's been waiting to talk about this for a long time. So, you know, he's in a good place right now. Well, we all are, man, because we're fans here. And, you know, those of you who know the show, first up, welcome to the club. We salute you. Second of all, as you may or may not know, I mean, our initial name actually comes from that TV show as well. Wulong is a reference to the currency that's used in the show. So it's actually a form of money. So that's where the name Wulong Talk comes from. Not because we talk money, but, you know, because we love talking about geek stuff. So yeah, that's that's where the Wulong Talks name comes from. So for those of you who have been listening to us and following us and wondering why, now you know. So yeah, as I said, this was the 20th anniversary this week of the show first airing. Richard, first of all, I mean, what is your first kind of memory of watching the show when it came on, and how did you find out about it? Because we didn't really have, like, you know, back then we didn't have as much regular access to the internet as we do now. So, you know, how did you kind of stumble across it?
It was just random. Like I'm someone who's always had quite weird sleeping patterns, and it's something that's only just started to maybe come to some form of normalcy now that I've got a child. But I mean, I still maybe go to bed around, let's say, 2 o'clock on some nights and wake up around, let's say, 7. But back then, when I was younger, me and my stepbrother, wow, like our sleeping patterns was ridiculous. So it just happened by chance that, I mean, one night we were just watching, I think it was like cable. Yeah, he had cable. Didn't have Sky, he had cable. And there was an announcement for a channel called Toonami, and they kind of like just made this mention that there was going to be like an adult type of segment after a certain time, and they were going to, you know, show these 2 shows. One was called Cowboy Bebop, and one was Outlaw Star. Now, the actual advert itself was actually voiced by Spike from Cowboy Bebop, and I was like, wow, that just blew my mind. I was like, fucking hell, like they've taken this cartoon character and got him to narrate the actual advert of the show that he's going to star in. So that's breaking the fourth wall in so many different levels. And I was just hooked from seeing like the clips of the show and everything. And I remember me and my brother actually went out that night to go meet a couple of girls, because, you know, we were young and single and full of other stuff. And in meeting these girls, it got to a certain time, and I remember turning around to him and going like, "Hey, bro, like we need to go home, man." And he was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "That show, cartoon beat, that you know, that show, Cowboy Bebop's gonna come on." And I remember the girls turning to us and going like, "Excuse me, how old are you?" And I was like, "Yeah, like, listen, we can just meet up tomorrow." And I remember like my brother saying like, "Okay, let's hold on." And then we ended up like smoothing it over with the girls and everything, and having to run home to go and watch Cowboy Bebop. And that's my first introduction of the actual show itself, and ended up watching that first episode that night. And they actually repeated it because Toonami only had a certain amount of shows. So they would just repeat it through the night up till around, I think, 6 or 7 in the morning. And I think I ended up watching it, I think, twice in one night. And I was literally just sold from there. It's best one of the best times of my life. Cowboy Bebop, watching it, any show, any episode, and the first time I watched it, and any form of merchandise that I may have or may have seen, is up there with the birth of my first son. I kid you not.
He's not lying. That's the thing. He's not lying. Like,
God strike me down. I'm
he's
waiting.
not being dramatic for the sake of your attention, listeners. He's not. Alvin, how about you? How did you kind of come across Cowboy Bebop originally?
The first time I came across it was when I was big time into the Matrix. I was watching the Animatrix, which I had on DVD. I was watching the extras, and there's like this anime documentary on it where they're kind of talking about the history of anime. Like, among some of the stuff that they mentioned, one of them was Cowboy Bebop, and like they only show a short clip from one of the earlier episodes, and yeah, it kind of always stayed with me where I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to check that out at some point. And then it wasn't until, oh no, maybe 2008, 2009, when they were showing it on a channel on Sky, and I forget what the channel was called, but it was on pretty late, and I'd set Sky Plus to record. But I think they were showing more than one episode a night, but I didn't realize. So I actually missed a lot of episodes, and I think I only watched a small handful. And then I thought, oh, you know, I'm gonna have to get this on DVD at some point. And then yeah, when they re-released the DVDs, was it what 2010, 2011? Actually, it might have been 2010. And then yeah, I got it then, and then yeah, watched pretty much watched the whole thing, and then watched the movie afterwards, and ordered the movie at some point. And yeah, it's just extremely satisfying because it was episodic, yet there was also an overarching story as well. The animation was shit hot, especially for 98. There's some digital stuff in there as well, which was really good. yeah, it was just well done. I mean, it reminded me of a lot of things I'd already seen, such as like Firefly. But if anything, that would have been influenced by Cowboy Bebop because that came before. So yeah, no, it was cool. Yeah, I just dug it. I thought it was fucking cool as fuck.
No, I didn't know you got into it that late. I thought you were there like from like early. Wow. Okay. Cool. I'm not judging you.
Yes, we are. We're silently judging you. No, I'm kidding.
I'm not.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting that people are still kind of discovering the series to this day, which
the phenomenon.
Which is it kind of speaks to the quality of the show and the longevity of the show, because you consider how many anime series there's been ever since the first time it was released, which I think was in August of 1998. I think it was. I can't remember now. But I think it was August 1998 that it first came out. Let me just double check to make sure. No, it was April in Japan, and October internationally, it looks like. So yeah, since 1998, it's still relevant, to people today. And you kind of touched a little bit, Alvin, on the legacy of the show as well and how it influenced other things. Rich will get you in on that as well. But what were the kind of the things that stood out for you? I mean, you mentioned, Alvin, the animation looked really good. But what was it that kind of set it apart from other shows? Because as I said, there were other shows out at that time, especially other anime. So was there something about Cowboy Bebop specifically in terms of the way that it did things that resonated with you more than some of the other shows that you saw?
Yeah, I think it was thinking about the animation, I think it's like more realistic and more fluid than your average anime shows. Like, I think there's some instances where it's not, especially like with a character like Ed, for example. I think Ed can kind of sometimes fall into almost like anime cliches, like the weird faces and stuff like that. But for the most part, I felt like the movement of the characters was extremely human and fluid. And I think that must have taken a lot of fucking work and a lot of man hours and a lot of overtime to kind of just pull off. Because like it even seems like where Spike's like walking and like his posture, you know what I mean, is different from someone else like Jet, for example. And it's all like kind of like the characterization, like it's all in the body of the characters, and that shit's like super hard to do. It's not easy, you know what I mean? And something like Spike's posture when he's just walking about with like a cigarette in his mouth, it says a lot about who he is. You know what I mean? He's quite a relaxed, not really arsed. But then when he's fighting, completely changes. He comes right to life.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree with you in that. It's like like each person is like, not that each person, like everything that you see on screen in Bebop. I remember like reading like because I got like the limited edition Blu-ray, and there's like a little booklet in it. And I mean, this is one of the things that just got me hooked on the show even before I read this, is that if you watch it and everything seems to have some form of character or history. Whether you know the history behind it or not, you just know that there's some story behind it. So for example, like Spike's spaceship, the Swordfish 2, like you just know there's a story behind it. Even if you never ever find out what story it is, you just know that the way how he cares for it when he flies it, and when it's put on screen, you just know there's a story behind it because it just looks different. Or some people might might make a reference to it, like the same way how in Star Wars when they make reference to Han Solo's Corellian freighter, and how it doesn't move the same as like other freighters from that period and stuff like that. But what you're talking about, like the body language, nailed it. That's it. Like these aren't characters in anime. To me these were people. Like you said, like the way how Spike holds a cigarette, or the cigarette hangs from his mouth. Now it might seem like a cliche thing for people that haven't seen it. Like there's certain laws and rules to certain genres that when you watch it. So for example, if you watch a science fiction program or film or cartoon, whatever, now they basically say that you have to have a laser gun. That constitutes as like one of the fundamental laws of how is this a sci-fi movie, or how is this a sci-fi story, or it has to have a laser gun in it, or has to have a spaceship, and then basically, Cowboy Bebop is essentially it's a detective, film noir storyline. But the way how he holds the cigarette, or the cigarette hangs from his mouth, even though it sticks within the laws of that type of genre, it still feels natural. It doesn't feel forced. I mean, like you were talking about Ed, like sometimes even when Ed falls into like the caricature of being that stereotypical funny, anime kid, it doesn't even really go down that path. There's nothing dissimilar to the way how Ed acts and makes me laugh as to the way how Kramer from Seinfeld acts, where like the way how he moves is basically how his character is. And it's the same thing for Ed. Ed is up in the clouds, and how she thinks and how she talks is how she moves, and it stays within that character. It's like, for example, like when you watch the whole series, there's no break in how any of these people act unless they've basically been forced to react to something differently. So like you said, let's say, if Spike loses his cool, there's one episode where he gets angry and it doesn't feel out of character. It feels like the next progression of how this person would react in that situation. It's so, Jesus Christ. My heart hurts.
Well, for those of you who are listening and don't know what it is we're talking about, Cowboy Bebop is a Japanese anime series. As we said earlier, it was kind of launched sort of like late 1990s, April for Japan, and it was kind of October time that we got it kind of over here. I came across it much around, I think, the same time you did, because I think literally we were both excited to talk about this show. I remember, and we were both like, we both blurted out, have you seen this show called Cowboy Bebop? And we're like, oh my god, have you seen it? Like, and it was crazy. But anyway, the show itself is basically kind of like a futuristic, I guess, would you say a futuristic film noir? Because you mentioned film noir.
Call it tech noir, sci-fi tech noir.
Yeah, I guess sci-fi tech noir is a good description. Yeah. And it but it's got lots of different kind of influences, from sort of action movies to horror, in some episodes, to comedy in some episodes, depending on which character you were focusing on at which time. And basically it's about these 4 individuals and a genetically enhanced superdog who are stuck on a spaceship together, and effectively become intergalactic bounty hunters and work as bounty hunters to kind of capture criminals who are on the run. The series is kind of set in the future, and it's a slightly lawless future. So if you can imagine, it's almost like a Western, in the sense that, space has now become the Wild West, and these bounty hunters are basically the ones who go out and capture the people that are too difficult for the police to catch for one reason or another. So essentially it's these characters' adventures as they go off trying to capture these criminals. But underneath all of that, that's just the surface. Underneath all of that, as Richard was kind of hinting at, there's so much going on with each and every character in the series, and there's so much going on with their arcs and things like that as well. I don't want to spoil too much details and go into too much detail about individual characters, because I want those of you who are listening to this who haven't seen it to at least watch a couple of the episodes and try and get a sense of the flavor of what they were doing. But really, this show, as said, is tremendously kind of groundbreaking. Spike is the main character, a character called Spike Spiegel. As the boys have kind of touched on, he is kind of like your typical film noir hero / anti-hero, in a sense that he has a very kind of melancholy, laid back kind of exterior, but underneath that there's a lot of emotion, and as Richard has also hinted at, there's a complex past behind him. With Faye Valentine, you have the femme fatale character, somebody again who has a very complex past, and somebody who again has a lot going on underneath her kind of super cold and super cool exterior. Jet is a former cop, and there's a whole backstory about how he kind of ends up on the Bebop that's brilliantly explored as well. And then you have Edward, a girl called Edward, which was kind of odd back in 1998, not so much now, but that was something that a lot of us never had even heard of before. And she is, a technological genius and, is an expert hacker as well. And then it said she has a pet called Ein, who it's hinted at several times in the show is actually a lot more intelligent than your average dog. And it's suggested that Ein has been genetically engineered, but they never quite go fully down the road of exploring and explaining that. So these disparate kind of characters are the people who make up the crew of the Bebop, which is the name of their ship. And as said, they kind of go on these adventures across the galaxy. But, it just covers so much in terms of what it's able to do. Guys, what's your favorite episodes? Do you have any kind of standout episodes that you love watching again and again from the show? I can think of two. There's two. I can't remember the name of one of them. The other one I know the name of because I love that episode. But Rich, we'll start with you, man. Do you have a favorite episode?
Yeah, I mean, there's literally not one episode that I can't watch. Can't not watch. But it's the first two-parter, which is that Ballad?
Yes, Ballad
for Fallen Angels.
Oh God, I forgot.
Is it Ballad for Fallen Angels, or is it Symphony for the Devil?
Oh God, I'm going to look it up.
Yeah. Okay, you look it up. Yeah. So basically, just to let you know that basically each episode is named after a famous song or a style of music. At some point, I think we actually will need to dedicate a whole show to this show. Because it's that deep. So music plays a very, very big part of this show as well. And it also adds character to everything. It's the same way how some people who might read a Batman comic would say that as much as Batman is a character and everyone else is, the same thing goes for Gotham City. Gotham City is a living, breathing thing that helps to push the character of Batman forward. Yeah, so my favorite episode is basically Ballad of Fallen Angels, which goes into Sympathy for the Devil, and it's the first time where you see Spike Spiegel come out of his comfort zone, and it's just a beautiful thing to watch. That the thing about the characters that we were talking about is that Jay just gave you like a brief breakdown of how the characters are, and like I said, once again, how they all visually look isn't necessarily what's going on inside their head or how they're feeling. Probably the only person who actually stays true to how they look and how they actually feel and live their life throughout the show is Ed. And I've actually just had a brain fart. Like Ed is basically just so fluid with everything and the way how she moves and everything like that. That's essentially how she lives life. And when you meet her parents and stuff like that, or when you meet her parents, it just kind of makes sense as the reason why, to a certain degree, I'm not going to put any spoilers, why they probably are the only person that has what you'd say, a normal happy ending. But Spike basically ends up meeting a guy that he used to be good friends with and used to do some badness with back in the day. And it just brings out a side of Spike that's only hinted at before these episodes. And it's just, like I said, it's just amazing because you see him go from somebody who's quite laid back to somebody who's literally willing to die not because it's the right thing, but because he feels it's fate. And that's the thing that runs throughout this show. This show is about people living in a particular period of time. So any information that you might find out about them, that's all you're ever going to find out. There's never a sequel made. That people have tried to make try to petition for sequels and things like that. It's not about that. This is a family that you basically end up living with for 24 episodes, and it's much like real life. I've known Jason since I was 16, but there's still stories that Jason can tell me about when he was younger, or sometimes we wouldn't be hanging around each other, that I wouldn't know. And that's how life is. So when you see these people come out of their comfort zone, you're like, wow, like what made this person flip? And I think nothing works more than when you see Spike lose the plot, because he's the most laid back person on the ship. His favorite things are like, if he's not training, then he's basically eating. If he's not eating, then he's basically sleeping. And so, yeah, those bits, those two episodes where he meets his arch nemesis, it really gets me going, man.
Yeah. That was those two episodes were kind of the perfect example of the kind of quality of the writing in those shows, because they they work perfectly as a bridge, even though they're almost two separate stories in a way. Obviously the connective tissue is there with the other character, this nemesis character who reappears, but you know the plot threads of the two episodes are still separate, and yet because of how skillfully it's written, you know, it feels like it's one whole big episode, even though it isn't necessarily one big episode. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's a cool last episode that I remember that. Alf, is there any episodes that stand out specifically for you or things that you remember?
Yeah, the one that stands out for me the most is I don't know the name of the episode, but you'll know when I describe it. It's the one where they kind of do their alien episode, and there's something aboard the ship, and it's kind of like this symbiote from SpiderMan, and it's kind of like this kind of like sludge slime kind of thing. But then when you find out kind of more about it, it's just a bit odd because the episode is kind of like it's all confined to the Bebop, and you know you're going through the episode and it seems kind of familiar because it does kind of like run pretty much like Alien or something like that, and yeah, it kind of just comes at a point where like up until that point the show really hadn't done anything like that, and so kind of like, you know, you're watching it and when you find out as to where the alien came from, you're just kind of like, what? Like, but you know, it's kind of having a laugh at the end of like that reveal. So that was always one that stuck out. Like Richard was saying about Ed, yeah, that's heartbreaking. Like that ending for Ed. I think it's really, especially when Call Me starts playing. I thought it was really kind of like just really heartfelt and like. But obviously, you couldn't have Ed at that climax, at the climax of the show, because it'd kind of be too raw. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that they did. They do that with Ed. That's a great moment. And I also like the one with, you know, when they're trying to find the Betamax player.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
I really like that one as well, because I won't say who we find things out about, but yeah, they need to find a Betamax player, and they actually get a VHS. They get the wrong one at one point because they get a VHS. But yeah, when they actually manage to watch the tape. And someone is able to see, well, or remember, or actually see part of their past that they can't actually remember, because they've kind of have a bit of a loss of memory, but they discover more about themselves as to who they were and well when and where they're actually from.
Yeah, brilliant. Two brilliant episodes there, folks. Make sure you check them out. Now, for me, there is probably two episodes that really kind of stand out for me. And they're both very, very different from each other, and yet they kind of tell you everything you need to know about that show and why that show is so great. Because I guess that's what it is that makes the show so great, is that its ability to kind of genre hop from episode to episode. You know, one episode can be really funny, another episode could be really emotional, another episode could be exciting, and another episode can be scary. So I've picked up two different episodes. The first one is an episode called Mushroom Samba. Now, I know Richard knows it as well, because he knows that's my favorite, because I love that episode as well, because it's one of the few in the series that focuses on Ed and Einstein the dog. And basically through, you know, the throughout the course of the episode, Ed comes across these mushrooms and kind of wants to find out, you know, what these mushrooms do. Now it turns out these mushrooms are a quite sought after drug that several drug dealers are interested in as well. And but Ed has no idea what the effects are, so she kind of experiments on the crew of the Bebop and feeds them the mushrooms, and they all go through various different stages of trippery that is just brilliantly done visually as well, and it takes the main characters out of their comfort zones too. And also because, like I said, we meet like various different kind of rogues in that episode, and they're absolutely hilarious. There's another bounty hunter, a black woman, I can't remember her name now in the story, but she's a bounty hunter, and she does like some crazy stuff in that episode, and it's just brilliant. It's just so funny, like the comedic timing that's pulled off in that episode with the characters and with the writing is just so good. And as I said, with Ed and Ein being two of the more lighter characters in the series, it was just such fun to have an episode where it was kind of like a caper almost, you know, like an old school kind of Hollywood caper movie, in told inside of sort of 25 minutes. And yeah, it was just brilliant. So I absolutely love that episode. And the other one, which is again another one Richard will know very, very well, and I'm sure you know it as well, Alvin, is Perro Le Faux. Which is, again, to show you the complete contrast between what that series was capable of doing, is probably one of the scariest and most tense things I've ever seen. Basically, in that episode, the lead character, Spike Spiegel, goes up against a hitman who seems to be basically invincible. He has the ability to fly somehow. He kind of floats. He dresses like a demonic clown in a way, so he's a bit like Pennywise from It. He doesn't, bullets don't seem to work. Spike tries his best moves and gets absolutely destroyed by this guy. He has a manic kind of smile on his face, and he's always laughing as well in this kind of horrific way. And I remember this is, back in the days when I still used to smoke a bit of weed and stuff. And
what you mean, like yesterday for me?
Yeah. And like, when you're high and you're watching that episode, man, wow, it's scary. Like, in fact, you don't even need to be high.
Yeah, you don't need
to. That's doing it a disservice to say that, to be honest. So yeah, the truth is you don't need to be high to be scared by that episode, because that episode is just creepy as hell. The tension is just palpable, because as I said, by this point it's quite late in the series, so you're very well invested, and Spike as a character well, and that he's a guy who's not gonna back down from this challenge, even though, you as an audience member are looking at it and you're like, Spike, you're outgunned. Like, you're going to get killed. Like, don't be stupid, Don't try and go and take this guy head on. And as the episode kind of unfolds, especially early on, Spike gets his ass handed to him, because as I said, he doesn't know what he's dealing with this guy. And so he kind of has to address kind of parts of himself and the darker parts of himself in order to beat this villain. He kind of has to go to within the dark side within himself. And Richard mentioned the episode before where they kind of touch upon his dark past and the kind of things he had to do previously in his previous life as a gangster for the Red Dragon Syndicate. So there's a very deep and dark side to him, even though he has that kind of melancholy, kind of laid back, I'm not bothered about anything kind of appearance on the outside. So yeah, this episode is one that really stretches into the limit. So I love that episode, man. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. So guys, I mean, we've given people quite a few episodes there to check out. I guess we should probably talk a little bit about legacy as well for Cowboy Bebop. So what do you guys see as kind of the lasting legacy for the show in terms of the other things that it's influenced? I mean, you mentioned one earlier, Alvin, so I guess you can go first. But how do you kind of see the influence of Cowboy Bebop today?
How do I see the influence of it today? Oh, that's a difficult question, actually. I mean,
do you want me to give you some
anime
time?
I've seen. Well, no, I was just about to answer. But out of all the anime I've seen, I think kind of like it'll just be the quality of it, like literally in terms of the writing, music, the animation, just the whole cohesion of the thing. I can't say I've seen anything else like that. That is just one kind of like perfectly formed pizza. That's the only way I can describe it. and because you've all watched tons of anime, but I can't think of anything that is as solid as that. I think the only thing for me that comes close as having like the style and whatnot and kind of the story and the characters is probably like Samurai Champloo. And that's not me saying any other animes aren't as good or aren't close to it. But it's kind of, I don't want to call it perfect, but it fucking kind of is. And not only that, it kind of worked for a Japanese audience, but it worked really well for a non-Japanese audience. So again, that's like, you don't have to be a weeb to be into Cowboy Bebop or enjoy Cowboy Bebop. But for some people, it's overrated. But I don't think it's overrated at all. I think people always mention it because it's just the cohesion of the thing. Like, the idea is solid, and it everything complements one another. Like, the music complements the style, and so on and so forth. And it all just, like I said, perfect pizza, man.
And actually, yeah. Sorry, Rich. Just before you jump in, I forgot to obviously mention something quite important about this anime, and one thing that, for me, I think now I look back on it and on some of the other animes I've seen before and things like that, this show is the first one that really kind of showed you the importance of music to a movie or to a piece of TV, and in particular to this anime series, and how music can tell as much as a story as the dialogue and you know what you're seeing on the screen is. And so for that, we've got to big up the composer of the show, called Yoko Kanno, who worked with a Japanese jazz band called the Seatbelts, who created that iconic theme song that you hear at the beginning of the show, and also the closing theme song as well, the Real Folk Blues. And between you and I think we've got like the entire collection of that.
Well, I think all of us. Like, I think I used to have it and I lost it
as well, hasn't
then
he?
luckily I got the whole album of Alvin. That I mean, like, the album itself is like split into volumes, right, Alvin? How many tracks is it? 100 and how many is it? 100?
I can't even. All I know is that there's fucking loads. Like, just if you include the movie as well, and the alternate versions, like the remixes and all that. You're going to be sitting there for at least a fucking day, an entire day. I mean, 24 hours probably.
I think there's over 100 tracks. There's literally over 100
tracks. For sure. So that was to say. But sorry, Rich. Legacy. For you, what do you see as the legacy of Cowboy Bebop? How do you see it having influenced popular culture going forward and things like that?
Well, the thing is, I personally think that anybody that watches anime now, that anime has somehow been influenced by Bebop. Like, I mean, if I had to give it a rating, I kid you not, I'll give it an A+. It is one show that I can literally watch from beginning to end. And like I said, and it's because it does everything so well: the animation, the action, the comedy, the music, the design. Like, everything is just it's just perfectly done. And the reason why it works so well, and the reason why its legacy has lasted so long, is because the thing about the show itself is that it itself pays homage to everything else that has come before it, but it does it in the best possible way. So they know how they say that. I think it was the saying that imitation is the best form.
It's the serious form of flattery.
There you go. See, now there's a reason why Jay's the brains of the operation. All right, and it's one of those things. Like, I mean, for example, let's say like when Independence Day, the film comes out. I know I might be going a bit of a tangent, but stick with me. Independence Day will come out, and then you'll always be like, you get your DVD bargain basement version that some small little studio will try to put out to to try and cash in, right? And then it will just basically just like I said, just throw out all the sci-fi cliches into that film or into that story or whatever it is that's been ripped off. Bebop looks at every single genre and takes the heart and soul of it and uses it to its own strengths. So it's not basically like a direct ripoff. For example, like when Alvin was talking about the episode where it's kind of like based on Alien. It's not a direct ripoff of Alien. It pays homage to the reason why Alien is such a good film, and it seems to do that throughout the whole series. And so, in doing that, that's the reason why its legacy is still felt now, is because it's crafted its own voice, and it's just done perfect. The director, Ryan Johnson, basically the guy who just did the latest Star Wars movie, whether you're a fan of his or not, I would definitely say go and check out some of his movies. But the closest I think that I've ever got to a Bebop live action film is Ryan Johnson's first film called Brick, which stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and his second film called Looper. And there are blatant references that you can see on the screen, in which you can, it looks like Bebop. And Ryan Johnson has actually gone on record as saying that he's a huge fan of Cowboy Bebop the movie, and at some point he was slated to direct it with Keanu Reeves. But up until that happens, we just have to watch the TV show. But yeah, I think that the legacy is still felt now. Like I said, a lot of people say that, it's overrated and things like that. But the shows that they probably watch are somehow influenced by them, whether it be, like I said, the animation or the music or the way how stories are told.
Absolutely, I would agree with that. I mean, the fingerprint of Cowboy Bebop is everywhere. If you are an otaku who likes an anime series with a good soundtrack, you can probably thank Cowboy Bebop for that, because they were the ones who really kind of invested in music as much as that. As Richard, mentioned, Ryan Johnson is a big fan. So if you're a big fan of Ryan Johnson and his work and the things that he's done, then you should be watching Cowboy Bebop, because that was, he specifically, as Richard said, has referenced Cowboy Bebop several times and talked about how much the show means to him and how important it was to him. So legacy wise, the fact, as you said, that we're still talking about it 20 years later kind of shows you, how important an anime series it is. So even if you're not a fan of it, you have to kind of acknowledge what, this series has done and what it's been able to do. It's in terms of the movie adaptation, as Richard mentioned, there's been a movie adaptation in development hell, unfortunately, for about, I think, 15 years. It's gone through various different directors' hands, various script writers' hands. And there's part of me that kind of feels like, yeah, maybe it needs to just stay there, to be honest, so that, we still have the anime series and that we encourage people to watch the anime series. So I hope that happens. But in terms of the director of Cowboy Bebop, the main director is a gentleman called Shinichiro Watanabe. As said, for otaku who are listening, they'll know that name because they know that he was involved in the Macross Plus series before he got involved with Cowboy Bebop. And his work after that includes, as Alvin mentioned, an episode of The Animatrix. Also, arguably the second greatest animated series of all time in Samurai Champloo. And he's gone on to direct other animes after that as well. Although I don't think he's worked recently in the last 5 years from what I saw.
When did Terran Resonance come out?
Terror and Resonance, I think, was 2012, wasn't it? So it's been a while. So Terror and Resonance is probably the last thing. I mean, Terror and Resonance I haven't watched yet, but it's quite ambitious in terms of the kind of things that he wanted to achieve with that anime. I personally didn't quite enjoy it. I watched the first episode and was like, I couldn't get into it at all. But it does remind me of another anime of his that I did watch as well, called Space Dandy. Was really good, was a lot of fun. But Kids on the Slope,
again,
I still need to borrow that from you. I need to lend you my Blu-ray. But Kids on the Slope is really like quite astonishing in terms of some of the things it achieves visually and what he's able to do with that story. So definitely something to check out. But all right, we're going to have to, I think, head towards the exit door with this one. So, but before we do, let me give a couple of shout outs as well. First of all, let me give a shout out to Home Video Hustle podcast. Those guys got involved on the Cowboy Bebop discussion as well, and they said that it was one of the shows that got them into anime. So again, that kind of tells you how important that show is. So thanks a lot, guys, for getting involved. Also, big up to Tam the Man from the Broken Elevator podcast. He said it was one of the first DVDs that he bought was a Cowboy Bebop box set. And he thinks it's probably the first show that he ever binge watched over a couple of days. So Tam, thanks a lot for the contribution, man. Big up to yourself. Also, we've got to do a couple of quick shout outs as well. Big shout out to okay, it's a list of people, so I'm just going to run through it real quick. Big shout out to Miss A Naturally, Yelzabot, Hugo Cosplay, the Gooncast, Jay and Brady, Krempogs, the Power Nerds, Kung Fu Drive-In, the Puckies, hashtag Blackout, and PTO Unlimited as well. And a couple of big birthday shout outs as well. A very big happy birthday to our brother Big Joe, who always listens, and a big happy birthday as well to Glenn from Glenn and Her podcast. Okay, guys, did you want to add anything?
How long we got?
Not long enough, bro. So,
Okay,
Richard, we can't do that. Alvin, anything you wanted to add, bro, before we kick out?
Nah, good. I'm all right.
Yeah. All right, cool, man. Well, where can people find you at, bro?
At Big A85GL on Twitter and Instagram.
Wicked. Well, we're out here. I mean, you know where we're at. As said, listen to the end of the podcast, and you'll find out where you can subscribe to this one and where you can get in touch with us via email and social media and everything else. So yeah, we're out of here, folks. So until next time, stay safe, and we'll see you, Space Cowboy. Richie, say goodbye.
You're gonna carry that weight.
Alvin, say goodbye.
See you later.
All right, we're out. Peace.